Well, happy Wednesday, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Study Hall here by Napa Valley Wine Academy on Facebook Live. Today we have with us Janet Campen, who will be talking about the ageability of two wines. She'll be tasting through those with you here live on air. And this is specifically geared towards WSET diploma students, so level 4 students, but also great for anyone who's taking any wine certification or just enjoys wine casually as well. So without further ado, let me bring Janet onto screen and let's get rolling. Hey, Janet.
Hey, happy to be here today. Like Christian said, I'm going to be taking you through two wines to discuss ageability today. On the WSET Level 4 diploma exam, they're now going to be asking you to assess ageability of each of the wines on the exam for the D3 Wines of the World exam and possibly for sparkling or fortified. Today we're just going to be looking at two still red wines for that. But before I go through the tasting, what I'd like to do is just start out by talking to you about the two things that we need to consider when we're looking at ageability for wines, especially for red wines. The large majority of wines in the world are not going to be ageable and they're meant to be drunk young. So we're going to look at each of the characteristics that we'll want to look at to see, which wines we are going to want to age, which ones likely will not improve. So let's get started with that. The first two things that we need to consider for ageability. The first one is, will the wine improve aromatically or in its flavors? A lot of wines are pretty simple. They're not going to have a lot of complexity or nuance to them, and so they aren't worth aging, but they can still be refreshing in their youth. The second thing that we'll want to consider is the structure of the wine. It's not worth putting a wine down to age if it doesn't have the structural integrity to actually last a long time. So the first wine that we're going to taste through, I'm not going to tell you what it is because you might want to do this blind. The first one that we're going to go through, so I've actually tasted this earlier today, but I'll go through it again right now. So looking at the color of the wine, when I hold it at a 45-degree angle and look down through the top, I'm seeing a pretty pale wine because I can see my fingertips through it. I can see the stem when I look down through the bottom here. And it's got a kind of bluish tinge to it, still kind of red, and so I'm actually going to call this pale purple. What that's indicating to me is that this is a pretty young wine. So when I'm assessing the nose, I really do have to get it right up to my nose here to really get any kind of aromatic notes on it. So that's going to be a medium intensity for me. So I'm getting a lot of like ripe, plush red fruits, a lot of red cherry, kirsch, maybe like a candied strawberry note, maybe a hint of pomegranate, but pretty simple red, ripe fruit. Now on the palate, so it is a dry wine. The amount of mouth-watering acidity here, my mouth really isn't watering too much. It kind of falls away pretty quickly. It's a medium acidity. Not a whole lot of tannin here. They're ripe tannins. They're nice and pleasant, but we're kind of at the medium minus part of the scale here for tannin. Not too high in alcohol. I have a medium alcohol here. The body is also medium. And again, confirming what I found on the nose, a real medium intensity of those simple red fruit flavors. So the ripe red cherry, that kirsch quality, a candied strawberry, a slight pomegranate note, maybe a bit of raspberry. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And those flavors, they do kind of drop off pretty quickly, not very quickly, So I would call this a medium finish. And so when assessing the quality of this wine, I won't take you through a whole quality note for this, but if we're considering balance, length, intensity, and complexity, this wine is pretty well balanced with it, with the acidity, the tannin level, the intensity of the fruit, and the alcohol level. They're all in balance with one another, even though they're not very high. But it doesn't really have a complexity of aroma or flavor. It's really just those simple red fruits that we're adding. And it doesn't have that long finish either. And the intensity of those aromas are really not enough to carry it through to a longer finish. So if we were to assess the structure of this wine for ageability, and maybe Christian, now would be a good time to put up that note for this wine so everyone can see what I had written there. First thing we'll want to do is let's look at the aromas. Are these aromas particularly complex enough that we would expect that they would evolve over time and show something more interesting? So I would argue that because this wine shows such simple, straightforward red fruit, not a whole lot of complexity where it's showing a lot of clusters. By clusters, I mean, it's not showing blue fruits or black fruits. It's not showing any secondary or really any tertiary aromas. So it's pretty straightforward, really simple. I wouldn't expect that this would develop into more than just dried fruit aromas. It would probably lose a lot of its freshness, a lot of its ripeness with age, and not provide anything really more interesting than that. So again, the second thing that we're going to look at is the structure of the wine. So for this, what we really want to do is you want to look at what is going to preserve a wine. And there's three things in a wine that will preserve it: the acidity, the tannin, and sweetness. Now in these wines that we're tasting today, there's no residual sugar, so we won't be considering sweetness as a preservative quality, but we can look at acidity and tannin in these wines. And now I usually am looking for medium plus or high for acidity or tannin or both. And you can see that in the note here, I got a medium acidity. It wasn't particularly high. And the tannins are pretty low, medium minus tannin. So I would argue that this wine doesn't hold up structurally to laying it down for, 5 to 8 years or even further than that, which is what we usually consider for how long to age a wine is past 5 years. So if we're looking at the structure along with the aromas and whether they'll improve, this wine really isn't holding up on either end here. And so in the exam, what you would do is you would call this wine not suitable for bottle aging. And then you would need to argue that point. And what we've just discussed here, that is what you will argue. So you'll argue for the structure of the wine not being able to hold up to many years of aging. And you'll also talk about how the aromas will likely not improve and offer anything more complex or more interesting than what they offer now. And so we're going to move on to the next wine here. Wine 2. So again, assessing this wine, holding it at a 45-degree angle and looking at the color here. Very deep color. I can't even see the stem when I look down through the bottom. And it's a bright ruby color, so deep ruby for appearance. So what this is indicating to me is probably a very concentrated wine. So on the nose, I don't even have to really hold it very close and I can already get tons and tons of ripe fruit aromas, a lot of savory aromas, just holding it down here at my chin. And so that would be pronounced intensity. And so these aromas, I'm getting like ripe red cherry, raspberry, black cherry, delicious black fruits, black plum, blackberry, some violets. I'm getting a lot of secondary notes, really well integrated, vanilla, mocha, milk chocolate. I'm even getting kind of hint of leather, something a bit sanguine in this, and a lot of savory spice, maybe something like rosemary, thyme, definitely one of those more savory cooking spices. A hint of clove. I'm getting just barely a touch of dried fruit character, like a dried plum, dried blackberry on this. So it is starting to show just a hint of tertiary development here. So let's move on to the palate. So this wine is dry. Very high acidity here. My mouth is watering, but I'm also getting a lot of drying effect here. Very high tannin, but what's interesting about these tannins, they're very soft and velvety. So it's definitely a kind of a beautiful, interesting interaction that we're having here between this high acidity and mouth-watering effect and these soft, velvety, plush tannins, but there's quite a few of them. It's very drying on the gums and the sides of my cheeks here. Now, this wine is very high alcohol, and I'm particularly sensitive to high alcohol wines. But this one, even though I'm getting, really large warming effect, it's not overly burning. It's pretty well integrated, and what's helping that is the high tannin, that high acidity, and it does have that structure, that full body. This is a full-bodied wine. And a lot of concentration in the flavors itself is helping support and kind of temper that high alcohol for me. So a very well integrated wine. And then just confirming what was on the nose, on the palate, it is a pronounced intensity, really complex flavors. It's showing a lot of red fruit, black fruit. I got some violet in there, a lot of beautifully integrated secondary aromas from oak, vanilla, mocha, chocolate. That leather quality is really coming through on this as well. And again, that savory spice that I had mentioned. And the dried plum, it's not really showing as much here. It was more on the nose, but there is a touch on the palate. And then it does continue on to a really long finish. I've been talking for a few minutes now, and I'm still getting a lot of that savoriness, a lot of the fruit quality is still lingering on my palate. So very long finish on this wine. And so looking at the quality of this, I would argue this is an outstanding wine. It's got that wonderful balance between all of its components, even though it's a very high alcohol wine, very warming. Some might say burning, but I don't particularly feel the burn on this because of how well integrated it is. So it's got that balance. It does have that length, that beautiful length that's coming from that concentration and intensity of aromas, and it's bolstered by that high acidity and that high tannin. Very, very well integrated wine. And just wonderful, beautiful complexity, and it just follows through on a really long finish. So let's throw up that tasting note. And let's consider this wine from the perspective of ageability. So what we're looking for the flavors and aromas, are they going to develop? And so we're looking at, this wine is very, very complex. It's showing a lot of unique, varied, nuanced flavors. Every time that I come back to it, I'm getting some new aromas on it. So what this is indicating to me is that it is concentrated enough and has enough of those aromatic qualities that are going to evolve over time. It's already showing just a hint of tertiary, so that's indicating to me that it can start developing and can probably go even further because it does have a nice core of fruit to it still that's very ripe, very well integrated together. So it can age for many years probably because it's not going to lose that fresh fruit quality for quite a while. And the other notes in the wine, such as the secondary aromas, they're going to evolve as well. A lot of that savory spice, the milk chocolate and the vanilla, it's going to evolve into maybe more hazelnut aromas. A lot of, toasty aromas are going to start developing on this, as well as a lot of those spices. They're going to start heading more into like the dried spices, more of like an earthy herbal quality. I could see that happening with this wine as well. And so then on the other hand, now that we've considered the aromas and flavors, we'll want to consider, does this wine hold up structurally to long aging? So it does have a very high acidity, again, that preservative that we need. It does have that high tannin, and the tannins are already soft and velvety. And with age, tannins are going to get even softer. So I would expect that this wine could continue to age. Probably not, 50 plus years, because the tannins are already, pretty soft, pretty velvety, pretty plush. They're pretty much ready to be drunk now. So I would probably say that, the high tannin on this could hold the wine for maybe 10 to 15 years. Possibly longer, you never know. It's always kind of a gamble. But that's why you always buy more than one bottle, so you can test it through the years and see how it's progressing. And it does have that high alcohol, which can also act as a preservative for this wine. And so as the tannins kind of precipitate out of the wine, it's still going to have a lot of that alcohol and acidity to help keep things fresh and lively for the wine. So, does anyone who's watching want to guess what these wines were? Maybe we could throw up the first one, the first note. Or if we have any questions about ageability.
Yeah, if you have a guess as to what the wine is, or you want to guess the vintage of the wine, go ahead and put it in the comments section, and we can address those. Okay, nothing yet. So why don't we do the reveal, Janet?
The reveal. Okay, so this first wine is Louis Jadot Beaujolais AOC. Let's see if I can get this turned correctly here so you can see. So even though it's a 2018, but it's still showing pretty young, semi-carbonic maceration, so it does have a little bit more of the tannin extraction on that. Maybe that's a reason why it's still maintaining its youthful color here. But really simple red fruits. It's made in a fresh, fruity style. It's meant to be drunk relatively quickly after purchase. So this is wine that was not intended for aging. And so on the exam, you would want to say this wine's not suitable for aging, and then give those reasons for, it's meant to be drunk young because of its fresh, fruity character and the red, fruity aromas. And then structurally, it doesn't have the tannin or acidity or intensity or complexity of flavors to prolong. Okay, so the second wine.
Okay, so we've thrown up the tasting note here. If you have a potential guess as to what the wine might be, or the variety or vintage, go ahead and throw that in the comments section. We have someone here who's guessing Barolo as potentially the second wine. If there's any other guesses, go ahead and put them in there. Otherwise, we'll ask Janet to do the reveal.
Yeah, so Barolo is a really good guess on this wine. Something to watch for here. It's still a fairly young wine, but it has those soft velvety tannins, but also that really plush, ripe fruit can start moving you towards what this wine actually is. But Barolo is a good guess. It's actually Barossa Shiraz, Torbreck Bistri. Delicious wine, one of my favorites. Now, the acidity on this is a little higher than what you might expect on Barossa Shiraz. The reason for that is this one is actually 14% blend from Eden Valley Shiraz, which gives it just that little boost of acidity. So taking it up into that high acidity here. But how you could get to Barossa on this would be those ripe, plush fruits that indicate New World. Not quite as much of the savoriness that I would expect from an Italian wine. And the acidity here, while high, is pretty soft. I didn't really mention that in this note, but if you were tasting it, you would notice that difference from a Barolo. And then really the tannins here, that soft velvety tannin, would lead you to Barossa Shiraz, because that is one of the markers for Barossa.
Great.
Does anyone have any questions about ageability or the exams? Maybe at a later tasting we can go through aging white wines. But if anyone has any questions about aging reds, happy to answer those.
Great. And if you have any requests for future topics or tasting note topics, be sure and put those in the comments below as well. And we'll wait a couple of seconds as well. Okay, so we do have a question here, and I'll throw it up on screen. So, hi Janet. When buying a wine and not tasted it yet, do you have a go-to rule of thumb to determine to age or not to age?
Yeah, always when in doubt, see if there's someone there who does know the wine that, in the wine shop or in the restaurant who can talk to you about that. But when buying wine and you haven't tasted it yet, there's a few indicators of if the wine could age or not. Obviously, if you go for a wine that you know what the winemaking should look like, so for like certain appellations where they have aging requirements and maturation requirements in oak, that could be a good indication. Thinking of like Grand Reserva wines, they're always a good bet. Really high quality Bordeaux and Burgundy, in the cruise there, can always be a good bet for that. Really, the best thing to do, though, would be to either, if you can't talk to anyone there who's tasted the wine, is to buy a bottle, taste it. If you know that it could age or you feel like it could age, go back and buy other bottles of it and lay those down and enjoy the one that you bought right then.
Great. So I don't see any other questions at the moment. We have some couple of suggestions as to topics. So we'll definitely take note of those. Janet, I wanted to thank you for your expert level guide through these two wines. Enlightening as always, and no wonder you've won an award or up for an award with WSET for your tasting ability. Just proves it here again in this fantastic presentation. So I want to thank you for that, and we look forward to having you back on really soon. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, thanks for having me.
So thank you, everyone. Thanks again for joining us here on this Wednesday Facebook Live Study Hall tasting session. We will be conducting these every Wednesday, so make sure and tune in. We have a very special guest for you this Saturday coming up, so make sure and tune in at 1 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time for that study hall and Facebook Live. More details coming on our Facebook page. If you're interested in watching any of the past live broadcasts that we have done, head on over to our YouTube channel. Make sure and subscribe. We're providing great content there as well, but you'll be able to watch any of the past episodes that we've recorded for you. In the meantime, stay safe, drink well, and we'll see you back here on Saturday. Cheers.